It was just another ordinary day at the grocery store. The beeping of items scanned, the quiet hum of conversation, and the faint smell of fresh produce filled the air. Emily, a young cashier in her early 20s, was working her usual shift. She'd been at the store for almost a year, and in that time, she had seen all kinds of customers. Some were in a rush, some were chatty, and some were, well, a bit difficult. But today, none of that really mattered. What Emily didn't know was that today, something unexpected was about to happen. Something that would change her life. A man walked up to her register. He was middle-aged, wearing an old coat that looked like it had seen better days, and carried a few basic items: bread, milk, eggs. There was something humble about him, something that caught Emily's attention. He didn't seem like the kind of person who wanted to draw any attention to himself. Just another face in the crowd, another customer to get through. But as she began scanning his groceries, she noticed he was watching her closely, almost nervously, as if something was weighing on his mind. She finished scanning the items and told him the total. He nodded and reached into his pocket for his wallet. The man handed her his card. And that's when things took an unexpected turn. The card was declined. Emily tried again, thinking maybe it was a mistake, but the result was the same. She looked up at him, and in that moment, she could see the embarrassment on his face. His eyes darted around, and he fumbled with his wallet, searching for another card, but it was clear he didn't have one. The line behind him started to grow, and people began to shift impatiently. Emily could feel the tension in the air. She could have asked him to step aside or told him there was nothing she could do, but instead, she felt a tug of empathy. Without thinking twice, she quickly swiped her own card and paid for his groceries. "It's okay," she said softly, giving him a reassuring smile. "I've got this." The man looked stunned, completely caught off guard by her kindness. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, with a quiet thank you, he took his groceries and walked out of the store, leaving Emily standing there, unsure if she had done the right thing. She hadn't even asked for his name, and he was gone as quickly as he had come. As the day went on, Emily couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? Why didn't his card work? She shrugged it off, telling herself that maybe he was just having a tough time. She had no idea that the stranger she had helped was more than just an ordinary man, and that soon his true identity would be revealed in a way she could never have imagined. The next morning, Emily walked into work, expecting it to be like any other day. But when she arrived, she noticed a buzz around the store. Her co-workers were whispering, and people were gathered near the manager's office, looking at something on their phones. She overheard one of them mention something about a viral video. Confused, she clocked in and made her way to the front of the store. As she reached her register, one of her co-workers rushed over, her eyes wide with excitement. "Emily, have you seen it?" she asked, almost breathless. "Seen what?" Emily replied, now even more confused. Her co-worker pulled out her phone and showed her a video that had been circulating online. It was security footage from the store, capturing the moment Emily had paid for the man's groceries. But that wasn't what had her co-worker so excited. It was the man himself. His identity had been revealed, and the whole internet was buzzing about it. Emily stared at the screen, her heart racing as she tried to process what she was seeing. Who was this man? Why had her small act of kindness suddenly become the center of attention? What she was about to learn would not only shock her, but leave the world in awe of the connection they shared. But before she could even catch her breath, another unexpected twist was about to unfold. Emily couldn't believe what she was seeing. The man whose groceries she'd paid for, the one who had seemed so ordinary, so unremarkable, was actually someone famous. The video her coworker showed her had been shared on countless platforms, and it was quickly going viral. The man wasn't just a regular customer down on his luck. He was someone with a significant public profile, someone who had stepped away from the spotlight in recent years. And somehow, no one had recognized him in that moment. As Emily watched the video, she felt her stomach tighten. She wasn't sure how to feel. The comments underneath the video were filled with people praising her for her act of kindness, calling her a hero. But it wasn't about that for her. She hadn't done it for attention. She hadn't done it because of who he was. She'd simply seen a person in need and did what felt right. Still, it was hard to shake the feeling that something big was happening, something she couldn't fully understand. Word spread fast, and within hours, news outlets were covering the story. They were talking about the mystery behind why this man had been in the store, why his card had been declined, and why he'd chosen not to reveal his identity. As the coverage grew, so did the questions swirling in Emily's mind. Why hadn't he said anything when she helped him? What was going on in his life that led to this moment? The more she thought about it, the more the story didn't add up. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the man, who had remained anonymous for years, was being thrust back into the public eye. He had kept a low profile for a reason, and now all of that was unraveling. Reporters were digging into his past, trying to piece together where he had been and why he had disappeared from the spotlight. There were rumors, speculations, and theories flying around, but the truth hadn't come out yet. And with each passing hour, the tension grew. For Emily, the spotlight wasn't comfortable. She hadn't asked for any of this, and while people were calling her a hero, she felt like she was stuck in a situation she couldn't control. Her phone didn't stop buzzing with calls and messages from people trying to get her side of the story. Even her manager pulled her aside, telling her to be cautious and avoid speaking to the media for now. This could get bigger than you think, he warned her. But Emily wasn't sure what to make of that. At home, Emily found herself thinking about the man, what his life must have been like before all of this, and why he had ended up in such a vulnerable position. The media painted him as a former public figure who had lost it all. But there had to be more to the story than that. As she tried to piece things together, she remembered the look on his face when his card was denied. It wasn't just embarrassment she had seen. It was something deeper. It was the look of someone carrying a heavy burden. The next few days were a whirlwind. Everywhere Emily went, people recognized her from the video. She couldn't go to the grocery store, walk down the street, or even check her social media without seeing her name trending or people asking her about the man. It was overwhelming, and yet, in the midst of all the chaos, Emily couldn't help but wonder if she would ever hear from him again. As more information about the man slowly trickled out, the story became even more complicated. There were whispers that he had been involved in a major scandal years ago, something that had caused him to retreat from public life. But no one knew the full story. There were gaps, parts of his life that were still a mystery. And now it seemed like those mysteries were slowly starting to surface again. One night, just as Emily was starting to feel like she couldn't handle the attention any longer, something unexpected happened. She received a message, an anonymous note that had been left at the store for her. It was short, just a few words scribbled on a piece of paper, but it made her heart race. "We need to talk. It's important. Him." Emily stared at the note, unsure what to do. Was it really from him? Why now, after all this time? And what could be so important that he needed to reach out in this way? There was so much she didn't know, so much that didn't make sense. But one thing was clear. This was far from over. The man who had once been a mystery was about to re-enter her life in a way she never expected. The next morning, Emily found herself at the same spot where it had all started, the grocery store. Her heart pounded as she scanned the aisles, half expecting to see him waiting there, but there was no sign of him. Hours passed, and still, there was nothing. Just as she was about to give up hope and leave, she spotted someone out of the corner of her eye. It was him, standing quietly near the entrance, his head lowered, as if he was trying to blend in with the crowd. He looked different this time, more withdrawn, more tired. Emily's mind raced as she walked over to him, her heart in her throat. She didn't know what to expect, but one thing was certain. The man's story, whatever it was about to come to light, and whatever he was about to tell her would change everything. What could possibly be so important that he had to meet her like this? The questions swirled in her mind, the tension building with every step she took toward him. As they stood face to face, the world seemed to slow down. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, Emily knew that the truth, the real truth, was finally within reach. But was she ready for it? Emily stood there, heart racing, as the man she had helped weeks ago was now standing right in front of her. His eyes, tired but sincere, met hers, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if the weight of everything that had happened was hanging in the air between them. Finally, he broke the silence. "I owe you an explanation," he said quietly, his voice tinged with a mixture of gratitude and regret. "That day, when you helped me, you didn't just pay for groceries. You gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. Kindness when I least expected it." Emily wasn't sure what to say, so she just nodded, urging him to continue. She had so many questions, but something told her he needed to get this off his chest. He took a deep breath and began to tell his story. Years ago, he had been in the public eye, someone who was known, respected, and admired by many. But fame, he explained, had its price. He had made mistakes, trusted the wrong people, and eventually, everything came crashing down. There was a scandal, something that had been blown out of proportion by the media, and his life had spiraled out of control. He lost everything, his career, his money, his friends, and in the midst of it all, he disappeared, hoping to rebuild his life in quiet anonymity. But things hadn't gone the way he had planned. He struggled to find work, and even though years had passed, the weight of his past followed him wherever he went. He had been living a simple life, doing his best to stay out of the spotlight when that fateful day in the grocery store happened. The card decline wasn't because he had no money. It was because he had been locked out of his account due to a security issue. At that moment, he had felt a familiar sense of defeat until Emily stepped in. "You didn't know who I was, and that's why it meant so much to me," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "For the first time in a long time, someone treated me like a person, not a story. You didn't judge me, you just helped." Emily listened intently, feeling a mix of emotions. She had never imagined that her small act of kindness would have such a profound impact on someone's life. But more than that, she could see that this man had been carrying the weight of his past for far too long, and her gesture had given him a glimpse of hope when he needed it most. "I've been trying to figure out how to move forward," he said, looking down for a moment before meeting her eyes again. "And I realize that I don't want to hide anymore. It's time for me to face what happened, to make amends where I can, and to live my life without shame. You showed me that there's still good in the world, and for that, I'll always be grateful." Emily felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had never expected any of this. All she had done was pay for someone's groceries, but now it was clear that her kindness had been a turning point in this man's life. She didn't know what to say, but in that moment, She knew that sometimes the simplest actions could have the most profound effects. "I'm glad I could help," she finally said, her voice soft but steady. "But the rest is up to you. Whatever happens next, you've got a chance to start over." He nodded, and for the first time since they had met, he smiled. A genuine, hopeful smile. "Thank you," he said again, this time with more strength in his voice. "For everything." With that, they parted ways. But the moment stayed with Emily long after. As the days went on, she kept up with the news, watching as the man slowly began to reclaim his life. He gave interviews, speaking openly about his past mistakes, taking responsibility, and sharing his plans to help others who had fallen from grace like he had. People responded with a surprising amount of understanding. And while not everyone was quick to forgive, many admired his honesty and willingness to change. For Emily, life returned to normal, though she couldn't help but feel like everything had shifted in a small but significant way. She had learned that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple out in ways she'd never imagined. And while she didn't need the attention or the praise, she carried with her the knowledge that in a world where everyone is fighting their own battles, a little compassion can go a long way. The viral buzz around the story eventually faded, as all stories do, but the impact remained. The man had found his path to redemption, and Emily had found a deeper sense of purpose in the quiet, simple act of helping someone in need. As she looked back on everything that had happened, Emily realized that life was full of unexpected twists, and sometimes we don't always see the full picture. But what mattered most was how we responded in those small moments when someone needed a hand. Because in the end, it wasn't about who the man was or the media frenzy that followed. It was about the connection they shared in a brief, fleeting moment, one that changed both of their lives.